just a minute. I guess my voice is all clear to all of you guys. So do let me know if you guys can hear me loud and clear, just to ensure that you are all able to hear me. Just have a quick yes in the chat in case you guys can hear me loud and clear. Okay. So thank you, Ritwik, for letting me know that I was just muted. Uh, so I guess all of you can hear me now. That's good. So welcome all of you to this webinar on the debrief by Ritwik, who has scored a 760 on the GMAT in the very first attempt. We are gonna hear shortly from him in a couple of minutes. I'm gonna invite him to this live webinar where he is gonna share with us how he achieved this amazing feat of getting to a 760 in the very first attempt, which I'm sure is a dream score for many of us, because it is a score which can basically dazzle any adcom member to basically consider the application very seriously. So we'll invite Ritwik very quickly to this webinar right away, like very soon. But just to inform you guys, a quick announcement, and I'm very elated when I say this. We basically last week we helped about 8 students reach and enter the 700 club, and this webinar is basically a part of the interview series that we are conducting to basically help everyone, every GMAT aspirant, understand how these people entered the 700 club. And this is one big achievement. We are really proud that we could help these people. To just give you some names around the new entrants from GMAT Wiz who entered the 700 club, couple of students scored a 760, including Ritwik, who is there with us, who scored a 51 and a 41 in Quant and Verbal. G1 scored a 50 and a 42 in Quant and Verbal. He also scored a 760. G1 was a third time test taker. Ritwik was a first time test taker. There were a couple of guys who scored a 740 as well, Ritwik and Pranav. In fact, we made Ritwik's interview live on our YouTube channel also last week. You can watch that as well. And 720 was achieved by a couple of people. There was one student who scored a 710. Akshay, again, he actually improved from 540 to 710 in just a matter of 3 weeks. Okay, it's another success story. I know 710 may not look like very impressive, but this guy actually turned the table around very fast, and he also is a working professional. So he was able to achieve this, and all this happened the within 1 month of launch of our new learning platform, which is Biz 2.0, which has taken the learning to a next level using artificial intelligence. So, in case any one of you is interested in looking at what Biz 2.0 has to offer, you can check out this video later on whenever you want. But as I said, this interview is about Ritwik's success story, how he achieved this amazing feat. So I'm just gonna quickly give direction to this. Just gonna tell you guys how we have structured this discussion, and this is all about your questions. We are gonna take up a lot of questions from your end. You can feel free to ask anything that you have in your mind, and we will definitely take up your questions. But I will be the moderator, making sure that we take the right questions at the right point. So how we have structured this series is that uh, first we will start with understanding how Ritwik started his journey. How did he create a study plan? Because in my personal opinion, your study plan is about, again, I'll ask this question to Ritwik also, but in my personal opinion, it is about 70 to 80% of your success. If you plan your studies right, you kind of end up getting to the target score. So it's a very, very important part of your journey. Then we'll talk about the verbal prep strategy and how basically Ritwik achieved that verbal 41 on the GMAT. We'll talk about SCCR and RC specifically because Ritwik is a non-native speaker of the language. So how he achieved that 41 on the GMAT, in real GMAT, we'll talk about that. Again, Ritwik was actually getting 42 to 44 in the mocks. So I'm sure that he may not be very happy with the verbal score that he ended up getting. And he's in fact looking at taking another take to actually increase his verbal score further and get to the 770s of the world. So all the best to him from my side for that. But we'll talk about his strategies, like how he actually goes about doing SCCR and RC. And we'll talk about the quant strategy that he followed that led to a perfect quant 51. And we'll then move to the test taking strategies, like on the final day, what is that he did, how he managed his time, all of that. And we will take up, as I said, your questions and answers as well as we get along. So without any further ado, I am inviting Ritwik in front of us. So warm welcome, Ritwik, to this webinar. How was the feeling when you scored that 760 and then you saw that 760 flashing on the screen after your test was over?
Yeah, hi Piyush. Hi Piyush. Thanks for this. So yeah, the 760 feeling was great. I mean, um, I had gotten similar scores in the mocks before, but actually seeing it on the computer screen once you give the test, it is a very exhilarating feeling for sure. I can't deny that.
Okay, so did you pinch yourself to just see whether like this is real, or Was it like, okay, I know I was going to score this much?
I was sort of expecting it, but yes, it was still very satisfying. I mean, really happy moment for me.
Okay, good. Yeah, GMAT is a big burden for many people. I've seen students like preparing for years and years and actually not being able to still get that 700 mark. And getting that 760 in the very first attempt is a very very good thing. I'm sure that kind of takes a big burden off your head. And probably the second attempt, as I was talking about, that you're gonna take is gonna be a very, it's like a home run. Like you don't have any burden on your head to think about it, and maybe you can push your score up in that.
Yes, thank you so much. Definitely on the cards. Let's see how that plays out.
So Ritwik, let's get an introduction of you. Like I know about you, we have worked closely, but let's talk about you. Like what is that you do? Just introduce yourself to the people who are here, and you guys who are attending this, you can also talk about yourself, like in case you want to. Yeah.
Yeah, sure thing. So I have recently graduated virtually from BITS Goa. Uh,
Okay.
I pursued a degree in chemical engineering, and I have now joined Bain Capability Network as an analyst. So I actually gave my GMAT one day before joining the workforce.
Okay.
So that was actually one of the reasons why I wanted to do it early. And I started preparing for my GMAT. I mean, I planned my preparation around October, November last year, but I'll say I really got down to it in March and April.
Okay. Okay. So
Uh,
April basically is when you got down to it, as in you started doing it seriously. Is that right?
Properly, yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay. Okay. And you took the GMAT in like end of July, like third week, right?
Yes, towards the end of July.
Okay.
So I had planned to give it a bit earlier, but due to pandemic restrictions, that got delayed by a few weeks as well.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. So how did you go about like starting your prep? So what was the things that you did like in the beginning when you thought about the GMAT? Just to understand, like because I feel that many people do not start their prep right. So how did you go about like starting your prep initially?
So one thing was I got my motivation right. I feel that's very important. I knew that I was in my final semester of college, and so my coursework was relatively light. I had time on my hand, and I knew that wouldn't be the case once I started working. So
Hmm.
I knew it's better to get this out of the way as soon as I can. So I started prepare. So that was definitely my motivation behind this.
Hmm.
Talking about the research, I started up by reading online. There are
Hmm.
plenty of resources available on the exam, on strategies, on what resources you should follow. So I did that, and I talked to a couple of my seniors. So one of them actually scored a very high score as well recently, and he told me that enrolling in an online course really helps
Hmm.
because he also like tried studying on his own and did not get a satisfactory score. So he suggested it's better to get your prep right the first time itself, and that really resonated with me. So I thought might as well do that. So what I did then was research on a few services online. I took a few trial runs, and I really like GMAT Quiz's trial. And I, if you want, I talk to you on a call as well, on a Zoom call, and so that gave me confidence on the product. So that's why I ended up enrolling. Apart from GMAT Quiz, I used the OG guide, official guide, and OG verbal review.
Okay. So you used the GMAT with official guide and the official verbal review. For quant, you did not take the quant review, right?
So I did have
You
the
did not
book.
need it, right?
No, that's not the case. I actually ran out of time.
Okay,
So
okay,
yeah,
okay. Yeah, yeah. You took the GMAT almost on the last day before joining the workforce, so
yeah,
I can totally understand that. And honestly, like quant review again is let's say a simpler version of the official guide. So unless you are someone who is in the low 40s, you probably don't need to do a lot around the quant verbal, like quant review part of the OG. So that is good. So just to summarize, basically what Ritwik said, basically when he started with his prep, so he did three things overall. He got advice from his seniors to take some online course, like because they felt that that helped them, and he started researching some of the trials. And in fact, I recommend this to people as well. That always look at courses, trials of some of the courses, because that always gives you an idea whether the pedagogy works for you or not. And then he started studying with a proper action plan. So let's get to that part now. So let's say you understood that you use this resources, but how is that you started? Like how is that you actually began, basically?
right. So then burden was, figuring out how long my prep should be, how should I stretch it out, and when should I take the exam. So once I really got down to studying, I felt I needed a calendar of sorts to have a rough idea in my mind. So I feel so GMAT quiz has this calendar view of your tasks in which you can also, so you can view what courses, what topics are left for what weeks. So you have a rough idea in your brain ki, okay, I have these many topics left and I can plan this far out ahead. So that helped me. But once I actually got into it, the idea was to go topic by topic, bit by bit, and fully digest what I am reading or studying. So I did not rush into the questions
So
first.
Ritwik, you lost your voice for a moment, I guess. So
Okay,
yeah.
sorry, but
So
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 the idea
basically,
was to go topic by topic, bit by bit.
topic about. So basically, so can you tell us, like, let's say about like which section did you start with? Did you start with verbal? Did you start with quant, or did you do both in parallel? Like, how was the thought process in your mind when you were starting? Let's say.
So I come from a science background, so I felt my math was okay, my quant wide. So I started with my, I guess, relatively weaker section, verbal. So it was verbal
Mhm.
first. In verbal, I started with SC, followed by CR, followed by RC, which is also the suggested path.
Okay,
Um,
okay. So any reason why you followed this particular path and why not like do things? And why do you feel it is probably important to follow the suggested path?
why I did that honestly was because that's what the course suggested me. But now that
Okay.
I look back, it definitely makes sense. So if you do SC first, you understand how a sentence works actually. Like you figure out what someone is trying to say, right? How words play together. Once you understand what a sentence means, you can go through a passage, not a passage
Mhm.
like a small passage. Once you do a small passage, you can go to a full essay. So I think it's a logical progression.
So you're saying it's like taking one step at a time, like tiny
One
steps. You
step at a
initially
time.
start with one
Yeah.
small sentence, and then like going on and increasing the number of
Yes.
sentences that you have to deal with. Like, let's put it that way.
Definitely. Definitely.
Good. So you went about this order, SCCR and RC, and then you basically looked at individual topics that you were focusing on for each area, basically, right? So maybe you picked up something for sentence correction and you started doing it that way. Good. So
Right.
anything in
So
particular that you did for each topic, basically?
right. So what I so I had read enough reviews online, and I had read from my seniors. I no heard from my seniors that what they did was they dove right straight into the questions, OG questions, and that did not really help them because they did not really have a track or a proper methodology to do the questions. Right? It was more about getting the right answer, which is not really important. I mean, unless it's the actual exam, you shouldn't care about getting the right answer. So
Okay,
what I
it's
did
a big
was,
statement. Okay.
what I did then was I would look at a topic first. I would like see all the videos. I would do the concept boosters, the concept solidifier, if any, the practice quizzes, followed by the OG questions of that particular topic. So if it is idioms, or sorry, if it is modifiers, then I would only look at modifier K questions. Then if it is parallelism, I would only look at parallelism K questions. So I felt going that way really helped me solidify each topic at once. And I feel the topics are also aligned in such a manner that once you reach the last topics, it is very logical. I mean,
Okay. So if I understand correctly, in every single topic, you basically followed a certain order. You made sure that you learn all the basics, right? And then you basically used to solve official guide questions related to that particular topic. And obviously, as you progress through the study plan, like you kind of got to more and more advanced topics, right? So so just to kind of summarize what Ritwik said, so he kind of used a study plan basically, which is again from created by GMAT Quiz. Those of you who are aware of what GMAT Quiz and used free trial of it, you'll probably know about this already. So there's this calendar view which is given to you. You have tasks assigned to every week. You can just click on this and actually open this task. And for any activity that he did, he followed this like module wise order that okay, in evaluate, do video lessons, do concept boosters, and the practice quizzes and so on. So this is what basically Ritwik did. And in order to start with the study plan and all. So we will now get to the verbal strategy part from Ritwik. But let's take a question. Very interesting question has come from Ravi. So Ravi says, how is the approach for people with hurry, having like while let less days to spare, and if you have to do the GMAT quickly from scratch, I guess Ritwik, like people thought that you have prepared for a long time, right? You I guess started properly in April, and you took the GMAT in July. So how many hours on an average were you studying, like in this duration?
So even after taking July, I had a lot of free time because, like I said, because of the pandemic, it got extended by a bit. So I was planning to give it in June,
Hmm.
but I'll admit that I was relatively free. I didn't have any job to do. I didn't have any classes to attend. But I would study on an average not more than 4 or 5 hours,
Four
and
five
that
hours. Okay.
included like the videos, the questions, everything.
So you did 4 5 hours of prep for almost like 2 months
Two
or three
months,
months.
yeah. 2 months, yeah.
2 months, right? So my answer, Ravi, again, this is just my viewpoint. Like, if anyone really wants to prepare for the GMAT from scratch, and obviously it depends on the skill level of a student as well. There are people who will take more time, and there are people who will take less time. But on an average, about 300 hours, 250 to 300 hours of proper effort is required. In Ritwik's case, he put in about, I would say, 250 hours, about like 2 months, 2 3 months of 4 hours a day on an average, and he was able to get there. So everyone has a different timeline, but it's very important that you do the right things, and we are going to talk about the right things as well in this webinar from Ritwik's journey. But if you are actually on a rush for time, then obviously doing the right things become even more important for you. So let me put it that way. So it's very important that you do the right things from day one. Okay, so one more question that I'm taking up. Okay, so Manish has a question how we have prepared. So Manish, again, we are talking about that part, so we'll take that up. Uh, I see a question from someone who has written in name in Russian, probably it's Cyrillic alphabet, so I cannot read the name. But the question is around RC. We will take that question up like as we move to RC. And for maths also there is a question, but we'll come to that as well. So Ritvik, let's talk about now your approach for verbal. Like how did you go about verbal? And again, we understand the study plan bit, but let's talk about individual areas in verbal and what is that worked for you? How did you go about doing those things? And what is your input from, like, let's say feedback from whatever you have done to get to a 41? So let's talk about sentence correction first. Like what was the strategy for sentence correction that you followed?
Okay, so in the diagnostic test I took, there were quite a few questions, sentence correction questions, which I felt did not make sense at all. And so I had to first realize that it is not about, getting to know what answer is actually sounding right or, looks grammatically right. It's much more than that. So first thing was to understand what the author is trying to say.
Okay.
Second is, even if you get that, you have to, in a sentence, you have to figure out what role each word in the sentence is playing. So
Hmm.
every word is there for a reason, and it is in connection. It has a relation to the preceding word and the following words. So once you figure out that relation, then you can really break down sentence into small bits and understand why everything is really there. So it wasn't about uh, memorizing idioms or grammatical rules, but more about learning the basics first. So what I did for SC was, I would like I've said, I went topic by topic. I built
Hmm.
the basics first, and then for each question I would actually do a deep dive into why this question is wrong. So there are some obvious filters. You can see some mechanical filters like the parallelism is wrong, this is faulty, so you can eliminate them. But I would like really stress again on the fact that it is not about this option that looks right or sounds right, but one that really conveys the correct meaning in a
So how
decent
did
enough
you get
manner.
this realization? Like this is an interesting point that you have made, that something that does not, like, it should not go by what sounds right. You should go by what is actually making sense. And honestly, Ritvik, when I was preparing for the very first time, like for verbal, I it took me 6 months actually to understand this. I always felt that it is all about, like, okay, reading the sentence quickly, seeing if it is sounding right to you, and then looking at grammar and like looking at splits in the sentence and seeing which grammar rule works. But how did you come to this realization, like that it is probably the meaning or the logic which works in GMAT?
So one thing is I read up online a lot, and I like actually applying that to my. So the things I agree with. I mean, I saw that so many people who scored high marks, high score on the GMAT are actually suggesting it. So I realized that there must be some reason. So I was like partially agreeing with it. Then when I did solved the OG questions, it definitely made sense to me, because there were some questions in which you would just not agree with the answer if
Mhm.
you were following your ear.
Mhm.
So you would then see ki, even though this sentence sounds very funky, it
Mhm.
actually conveys the right meaning. So that's how I realized it.
And especially for a non-native speaker, I guess the way
Yeah,
we
you're
speak
not used to
English
it.
today,
Yeah,
yeah,
you're just
we're
not
not
used to
used
that
to
kind
it.
of language.
True,
I
true.
mean, if
And
natives are struggling with some questions, then you are sure to struggle with them as well.
definitely, definitely. Even though we learn English as our first language, it's definitely one very big concern that which we have. And I like your point, and it's a point to be noted for anyone who's attending this webinar, that please make sure that you actually focus on looking at what successful people are doing, because I guess one of the easiest way to get success is repeat what other people have done. Like, why do you have to reinvent the wheel? Why do you have to do that? Like, if someone has achieved success using something, it's best to actually use the same thing. So very good input, Ritwik, from your side on that. So basically, what you mean to say is, like, you looked at like how things are making sense in sentence correction, whether it is making sense or not. While you're reading the sentences, you looked at the role played by the entity, how it is connected to the previous ones and the next ones, and all of that, right? That's how you used to think. Uh, I guess, yeah. Yeah. So we lost you, Ritwik, in a bit. So
Right.
okay,
That's
okay. Good, good, good. That's good to know. So one more question that I get again, when I actually talk about this with some students, that if we actually focus on this approach of, let's say, looking at the role played by each entity in the sentence and understanding the sentence well, doesn't it take a lot of time also to actually solve a question? So yeah,
um,
Ritik, do you hear my question?
I think my
I
net died
think
for a second.
okay, okay, no worries. So I was saying that you can hear me now, right? At least.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I was saying that many people ask this question, that if you actually focus on, let's say, reading the sentence right and actually focusing on the meaning of it and the role played by it, don't you end up taking a lot of time on sentence correction questions alone, which you are supposed to solve quicker? Like, didn't you face that problem?
So I think it's like any learning any other skill. It takes time at the start, but once you get accustomed to it, like it's a very natural process,
Okay.
and you just do it on your own automatically. It takes very less time. And I mean, that's just the time aspect, but I feel that it's a very methodical thing to do.
So Ritik, I think there is an internet issue at your end. Can you just try switching to another network?
Yeah, is
In the
it fine
meantime,
now?
I'm gonna
I
take a
switched my data.
yeah. Okay. 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 So some people are asking questions around test day anxiety and mock timing strategy. Don't worry about that, guys. We are gonna cover that. Don't worry. We're gonna just go step by step, starting from the preparation strategy and then going to the test taking, because that's the last thing. Because unless you have the prep strategy in place, I'm sure even if Ritwik tells you what he did on the exact day, it's not gonna probably work out. So just be patient a little. We are gonna come to that as well. So good, valid points to take. So, what about critical reasoning? Like, how did you tackle CR? Like, what was the approach that you followed for CR?
So, so I'll admit that I've been privileged to, get decent exposure to the English language. I've read up in my childhood, so that definitely helped. But I feel that in CR, you really have to understand what information you're given, what you're asked to do with it, and what they're
Mhm.
asking you, obviously. Right. So
What is
I
given,
feel that,
what you're asked to do, and what they're asking. Okay.
yeah, so like three steps. So I've studied logic, I mean, in my school and bachelor, so it makes sense, right? That, for example, if it's a cause and effect thing, if X is causing Y, so you just figure out, okay, that this is happening, this. So you paint a mental picture of sorts before you look at the questions, even look at the options, like, even, right? So similar to cause and effect, there are like many other types of questions in CR as well. So I feel that just having the knowledge of what types of questions are there really helps you. I mean, so you don't really need to memorize them, that the frameworks, that what you have to look for in what type of question, but just knowing that really, I think it sets your mind to a particular way of thinking.
Okay. So what you are saying is basically when you read a passage like in an argument in a CR question, first thing that you have to do is understand what is written there properly. Like so, so when you used to do this, like when you focused on understanding the argument, was there a certain thing? What was there anything that you used to do, making notes, anything that particular that you kept in mind? Apart from like one thing that you said was like obviously thinking about the construction, like what is the author trying to do? Anything else you also did at that point of time?
So matlab, I just read point by point, line by line, pause where there's a comma, so that I understand what's really happening. I think that's you need to understand what's really happening to figure out, because otherwise you'll fall for a trap.
Okay, so just to get an idea, let's say if you're spending 2 minutes on a CR question, how much of that time would you spend on that reading part? You said that you would pause and read, you like at the commas and all. So again, I'm not sure if you timed yourself in that way,
Yeah,
but
so it's tough to tell you the exact time, but if I had to tell you, it's definitely the majority of time that should go into reading the question, because once you understand the question right, one, your chances of getting the correct answer go higher, and two, then you don't have to spend as much time pondering over each option. If you really understood the passage well, you can just directly eliminate at least two or three options like that, because they know they would either be irrelevant or they would be, trying to say the opposite thing or something else. And even when it comes to, figuring out the correct answer, the solid knowledge of the passage really helps you in figuring that out.
okay, okay. And you said like we lost your voice a bit. So you said what percentage is required to be spent on the question stem?
Yeah, so I said I'm not sure of the percent, but I would definitely say that a majority goes into the reading the question and a little part goes actually into the options.
Okay, okay, got it. Good, good. So basically, understand the question stem right, and if you do that right, yeah, it's very easy for you to eliminate the answers then. Okay, good. Um, Ravi's question again is about managing time on the test, so we are gonna come to that. And Ahmed, we are also gonna take up your question really soon. So let's go to RC. Okay, so what about RC? Like CR, we understood what is that you did, and what about RC basically?
So I feel once you actually strengthened your CR, RC is like the next logical step. It's like the bigger brother of RC, of CR,
Mhm.
sorry. Because in CR, you're tackling one passage, one question at a time. In RC, you'll have multiple passages, like two or three paras, in which you have more than one question. So once you get your basics of CR right, it is then about understanding the bigger picture in the entire essay.
Mhm.
So the same process to be followed. Like in CR, I would read every like sentence point by point, bit by bit. Finish one para. Try to understand what the para is trying to say. Move to the next para, then move to the next para. So, matlab, I think it's important to figure out the flow of flow of the essay to actually get an idea of what the author. I know it's very cliched, but if you actually try to think, try to figure out what the author is trying to say,
Mhm.
it really helps your understanding, because you're much more engaged into the passage, especially if it's a boring passage, like seemingly boring passage, something about I don't know 1600, the production of wheat in 1600s, or maybe the production of I don't know something else. Yeah, I mean, it's natural to get distracted or bored when you're reading those passages. But if you're really involved in trying to understand what the author is trying to say, that helps.
Very valid point. In fact, I was having this discussion just today with another student, and he was saying that when I'm midway through my verbal section, I lose interest. I lose interest in reading. Like I'm not able to concentrate at all. And I asked him, countered him basically, saying that, does this happen in quant? He said no, like it doesn't happen in quant. So why does it not happen in quant and why does it happen in verbal? So and very valid point, Ritwik. I feel that it's always about you taking interest in something. Imagine you doing quant questions where you're not following a methodical approach. You're just plugging numbers randomly and doing like heavy calculations. I'm pretty sure that after 25 minutes you will actually start feeling short of breath. That okay, what's gonna happen? So it is very important that you understand and get really interested in that particular question which is at hand. But coming to that as well, like a lot of people ask me this question, Ritwik, and I'm not sure if you thought about this yourself or not. But isn't this entire process of thinking about the author's intent and understanding the passage, isn't it time consuming? doesn't skimming on the question work better? Like, what is your
All
take
right.
on that?
So prior to GMAT, I had given a few tests which also had passages and all, and that was the standard process that I followed. I would skim the passage, or maybe read the beginning and the last sentence, look at the question first.
Hmm.
But I felt that that wasn't working in this case. Definitely not, because the questions are much more. I mean, you could miss out on a lot of things if you try to skimming it. And what the GMAT Quiz course suggested was to go through each passage first.
Okay.
So I was also a bit skeptical at first because I too felt that it would take a long time. So what I did instead was I would actually, while I did the RC questions, the OG questions, I actually timed myself for each question. And
Okay.
like granted, I took maybe 3, 4, 5, even more minutes for a passage. I
Hmm.
felt if the time it actually took you to answer the following questions, 3 or 4, 5 questions, that drastically reduced the average time you spent per question. Because now, once you had a better understanding of the passage, each question would take considerably lesser time. I mean, otherwise, you
So
would
let
have
me
to
get
go
an
back to the
idea, like
passage.
how much time would you be taking on each question?
Uh, so,
Just an idea,
the,
like just an approximation. Yeah.
the general rule I followed for the entire GMAT was I aimed for a 2 minute per question.
Okay.
So I would, if the RC passage had 5 questions, I would aim to do it in less than 10 minutes. That's what my aim was.
Okay. Okay. No, I'll rephrase my question. So I was not asking about the like end time, like the after effective time. I was saying that after reading the passage, you said that you will take less time on solving the question. So I'm saying
Right.
if you take off the time required on reading the passage, what was the time that you were spending on solving each question after reading the passage?
Oh, very less. I mean, most of them would you would do it in half a minute to 1 minute. Of course, there are a few tricky ones in which you have to ponder over them.
Hmm.
But even then, it doesn't take more than a minute or two.
Okay. Very valid point. In fact, to everyone who's attending this, this is another point which I want you guys to note, because many people come to me and say, okay, when I'm doing RCs, Piyush, I'm reading the passages properly. I'm focusing on the author's intent, and I'm still getting questions wrong. And when I ask them, okay, that is fine. Show me your mock test. Like I speak to many students, and I actually see your mock performances as well. I see them spending time on reading the passage, but then they are spending 1.5 minutes, sometimes 2 minutes on each question as well. So, if you're listening to what Ritwik said, he very categorically mentioned that it was taking him mostly 30 seconds to 1 minute on solving a question after reading the passage, because he did not need to go back to the passage, right, Ritwik? That was the case with you, right? You did not need to go back to the
Exactly. I
passage.
think that's what actually takes most time when you're
Exactly.
switching between the passage and the question.
The question exactly. And if that is not happening with you, even after reading the passage, if you are still taking more than a minute to solve a question, that means your understanding of the passage was not right in the first place. So you probably read it slowly, but you did not focus on understanding why the author has written it. And Ritwik said very clearly that you have to look at the flow of the information between paras, like how is it flowing, how understand what goes behind the scenes, basically what is
So
not
like
written.
one exercise that GMAT was gave after every para was to summarize in a line or two each
Mhm.
para, and I found that very annoying at the start, super annoying because they would say ki one line, write it down in one line, but I felt you don't. Yeah, it's sort of an automatic process once you are actually involved in the reading process. It sort of happens on your own. Matlab, it doesn't even have to be a descriptive summary, just something in your head. Okay, that this is talking about the development of this science. Second is about the application, and third is about the effects. So just having that broad idea helps.
Great, great, great. So we'll take up a couple of questions around this itself. So I'll take first question from which is from KJ. So he's asking that first of all he's congratulating you for that
Thank you.
760. But he's asking two things here. Number one, how did you come across your doubt phase on your preparation? And second one is basically related to this itself, but maybe a separate question also. How did you verify your strategy for answers to get right? So his question is more around how did you make sure that what you are doing is right, basically. So how did you verify
Okay,
your
so
strategy?
talking about the doubt phase, so I mean, at least the questions that were on GMAT was they have a forum, so you can just ask the question and you get a reply in a day or two. So that helps. But even other than that, how did you verify strategy? So the OG question that you're solving or the mock official mocks question, they are all on the GMAT Lab website, right? You can just Google them or you can search them on GMAT Lab, and you get at least 5 or 6 quality answers for each of them. you can just check whatever strategy is working best for you. I mean, it doesn't have to be the exact same strategy, but yeah, that's what towards the end of my stage, that's what I did. So when the mocks, if I wasn't sure about my own strategy, that's what I would do. I would just copy the question, search it on Google, and look at GMAT.
And during your preparation, like when you were, let's say, learning all this method that you mentioned, how did you verify whether you are learning it right? What was the method that you followed at that time?
I mean, no better indicator if you're getting the next question right or wrong. I mean,
Good. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
If you're, matlab, the key is to get answers, questions consistently right. If you're getting them consistently right, that means your strategy is working. If it's not, that means then there's a gap in learning. Simple as
And
that.
did you and one more thing which I generally recommend people. So did you used to match your analysis as in, so you were talking about something called irrelevant opposite, like you used to eliminate
Yeah, yeah,
choice values.
100%. So I actually spent a lot of question on each question. I mean, in quant, obviously, you don't need to do that, but in verbal, I would go through all the options in the official guide. So I would basically sit down with a bookmark. So I would look at the question, then look at the answer, then go to the next question, look at the answer. That's the process I followed.
Okay. So you validated whether each option that you eliminated was right or
Yes,
not.
yes.
Okay. Okay. So one
And
more
the
question.
OG answers are generally right. Generally, they are pretty good.
Okay.
Some of them are not
Yeah,
descriptive enough.
I do agree.
Yeah.
Huh? SC, though, I can still say I cannot understand 70% of what they write. Again, no offense to the quality of questions, but definitely the solutions I feel of the official guide, at least for sentence correction, are not elaborated. They are like rhetorical awkward. Two words I see every single question.
So for
So
that,
in my
you use GMAT Lab ke solutions.
GMAT Club.
Easy.
True. I used that as well. So that is good enough. So let's take up this question again. So what material did you use to improve your reading speed, and how long did you use to them to readily comfortable? So again, I guess you talked about using the GMAT Viz course, but other than this, did you read anything else as well? Uh, any other thing that you did for RC?
So for RC, CR and RC, I feel that the officials questions are the best. I mean, the third party questions are also good. They can help you with your understanding. But when it comes to the actual, if you had to ask me how would you gauge your own performance, I would say that's what you should do. You should look at the official questions, be it from the OG review, the official mocks. I think they're the best. So because even the GMAT based questions, the CRRC wale, they're super tough for like some of them, 750 plus one at least, 701. I think they're pretty tough. So actually going through them first and then going through the OG felt like a step down. So I felt I was sort of in a comfort zone.
No,
But
I
I did
agree
not.
with you in the RC part.
So
Yeah,
I did
sorry, you
not
continue.
read anything other than that per se. But I every passage that I did, I would maybe mark them on my error log and revisit them later. But yeah, that's what I feel, that official questions are the best for CIC, RC
So
and
you
CR.
did not read any novels or any editorials as such, either. Like,
No, no, I did consider that, but that was like during the last 2 weeks of my preparation. So then I felt the boat had sailed. It was too late for that.
and honestly, I when I was preparing, I'm just trying to recollect my old days, like when I was a student and I was preparing. I actually spent about like six odd months reading editorials and novels and whatnot. And what I felt was that I actually was focusing more on reading speed than comprehension, and that did not help a lot. As in, it helped definitely a little, but it did not help me improve my scores a lot. In fact, when my actual improvement happened, when I improved my score from a verbal 13 to a 41, the main thing in that main phase, I did not read any novel, anything at all. Like it was mostly focusing on the comprehension part. So again, personally, if someone asks me, my answer would be that okay, reading a novel probably could be a good thing, but if you're focusing on improving your reading speed, probably it's counterproductive. It's better to focus on your comprehension.
Yes, Madam, I would also like to say that it really depends on where you are right now. It'll differ a lot from person to person. So, like if you're someone who's struggling with the reading speed, then sure, maybe reading The Economist might help. It depends on what stage of the preparation you are.
No, definitely. It definitely depends on what phase you are, what kind of areas that you are weak at. And thank you so much, Karan, for letting me know my voice is really faint. I'll try to speak up loud. My new headset is probably not working at the best capacity right now. So basically, it also depends on like what are your comfort areas. So in case someone who is an engineer is struggling with humanities, let's say in general, like that was something which I never like to read, at least, like, because I was never exposed to it. So I generally recommend a book called The Story of Philosophy. It's written by Will Durant. You guys can take this book. It's a very good book. In case you want to know more about philosophy, it's a good book for that as well. And the language, the way of writing is very similar to what you get on GMAT passages. So in case you're looking at a good book, you can look at definitely that book and get it. And yeah, obviously, if you're not good at a certain genre, you can read about it. It's not like GMAT is gonna test you on outside knowledge, but knowing that a little, like being aware of the topic, probably helps you in getting the context around it. So that's how I'll put it up. Okay. Good that. So let's move to Quant. Again, I know a lot of us are Indians over here. Many people are engineers, good at Quant. You are an engineer, probably you were by default you were born to be good at Quant. Let me put it that way. But still, like, how did you go about your Quant prep, and what is that you actually learned during your GMAT Quant prep? What changed your thought process? Anything that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, so I did not take quant for granted. I mean, granted, I'll agree that it was definitely not. It was like at a comfort level because it was something that I had studied in say my 11th and 12th, and maybe in my engineering as well. But so I think my the background really helped because the topics were not something that were foreign to me. I had already done them before, so that helped. Then it actually started from the diagnostic test. I got a 47, 48 in my mock, and I felt it was sort of insulting because as an Indian, when it comes to math, you're taught, right, you should get 100, like all the questions right. So anything less than a 50, 51 really felt like an insult. But what I did anyway was I started with the OG questions because I felt the starting ones are easier anyway. So I did 100, 200 questions on my own. Then I did topic by topic GMAT quiz modules. I think they're really nice because they're actually in depth. Like they cover everything you need to know about a particular topic, starting from the concept diagnostic to the concept boosters, maybe two solidifiers, then followed by practice quiz, and each of them has a solution, maybe a video solution, maybe a text solution. So that really helps because, and if you go that in depth in any topic, then I really don't think. I mean, it's a very learnable thing. I mean, the entire GMAT is a very learnable test, but quant especially because it's technical, you can really do it. So that's what I did. So I did not do the OG questions topic by topic like verbal. In this, I just finished the GMAT course pura, followed by the OG questions at the end.
Okay. So in quant, you did not do it topic wise. You did it basically in the end. So
Yeah.
anything special? Any tips for data sufficiency? Again, a lot of people come and ask about this. Again, no one is asking here. I'm not sure. I guess most of us who are here are good with the quant and DS. But like, did you face any challenges with DS? Anything that you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so definitely. So I think in the problem solving bit, geometry is the toughest because some figures can be really tough to like figure out what they're asking, how to get that. But for data sufficiency, I think it can be anything. They can like trick you in many number of ways. The number of traps they can set for you is just too large. So it can be any topic basically. I think HCF, LCM, probability, statistics, those were the ones I struggled with a bit. So what I did there was if I got something wrong, I would just go back to square one, start from the scratch, look at the topic again, figure out all the basics, all the maybe formally revise them, and then start from build up my level again. So I think combinatorics is something I definitely struggle with till the end. But speaking specifically of data sufficiency, I think it helps to have a clear and methodical approach. So if you're solving in a notebook, don't just scribble anywhere. Just like that really helps because it frees up your mental capacity as well, right? So I'll write down what the question stem is, simplify it as much as I can, then move to the options. Then look at statement one, what it gives me, statement two, look at them independently, and then search for an answer. If you follow that approach,
So
I
like
think
all these steps should be clearly demarcated. As in, when you
yeah.
are
I mean,
looking
so
at the question step, you should be only looking at the question step. Is that what you're
yes,
saying?
you should not mix your knowledge, like because that's what people do. They will write down option one in right next to the question stem and think that is already given, then obviously question one option will be correct. Or they will look at option two while considering information derived from question option one. So yeah, so I think a clear methodical approach is needed. I mean, the official GMAT anyway gives you a big note like the notepad, so there's a lot of space for you to write. I mean, obviously this differs from person to person. I did not have to write as many things on the track, so I kept track in my mind as well. But for some questions, you just can't. You just need to write everything down.
So that's true. That's true. And a very nice tip. Yeah, this is very good. That because again, mixing up information in DS is a big problem. And if you're
That is
actually
killer.
noting them down properly, like you can kind of make sure that you get rid of that issue very easily. Good. I like
100,
that.
100% agree.
And when you also talked about little about, again, I'm just trying to summarize things here. You also talked about how you approached your weak area. So basically, when you identified that there is something that you're not doing well on, you used to go back to that particular area, redo those particular things from the course, from the GMAT course, and then you used to move forward, right? So
Yes. So and other than your like the basics, like obviously first you should try to get it right on your own knowledge, right? Try to figure out if you can get the. Then if you can't, then obviously there are backdoors available. Then you should look for that these answers can't be true or just start eliminating options. I mean that should be a secondary thing you do
secondary
on your.
strategies.
Yeah, I mean when you're practicing preparing, you shouldn't look for them. You should try to solve them on your own first.
Great, great, great. So I do have some on follow-up questions on this, but I'll get to them later. Let's first now move to the test taking strategy part. So we talked about your quant preparation, we talked about your verbal prep, but what did you do before the test days? Like, let's break the test taking part into two phases. First is what you did before your test. Let's say 10 days before your test, 7 days before your test. That part. And the second will after that we'll talk about what did you do on the day of the test, like how did you manage your time and things like that. So let's talk about the first thing first. Like, what did you do in the like last 2 weeks or 1 week before the test?
Sure. So the last 10 days or so were reserved for mocks. I did not study as much. I mean, apart from the topics that I was revising,
Hmm.
I would do one mock per day. At the end, I started doing them during the same time that my official test would be, which was 3 p.m. But other than that, I would do a mock. In the day, I would study whatever I had to revise. In the night, I would give the mock. Then I would go through each and every question that I attempted. Look at the flaws where I went wrong, or even in the question that I got right, if I could have solved them in a better manner.
Okay.
So I started with the GMAT Viz mocks. I did them first. So I reserved the official mocks for the last because obviously they're the official ones, so they know best. Um, Funnily enough, my GMAT Viz mock scores were actually lower than what I scored in the official mocks. I mean, which could also be true because I took them later. My last four mocks, I had two 770s, one 760, and one 750. Those were my
And these were all
mocks.
four official mocks, basically.
Yeah, so I bought all mocks, all four mocks with the first mock.
And that
I
would have
mean, yeah.
definitely boosted your confidence when you see the string of 750, 760s, and 770s only.
Yeah, so
So,
100%. So that's what I did as well. So every time I gave a mock, I would note down in an Excel each individual score and the number of questions I got wrong, because that was the only metric I had, right, to figure out. Baki sab everything else is with the algorithm you can't really figure out. But I could. What I thought was I like at least try to consciously try to reduce my number of mistakes. So I always noted down my number of mistakes in each section, try to reduce them,
so any specific
and
strategy that you followed for revision? You talked about that some part of the day you were using for mocks and some part of the day you were using for revision. So what was like any specific strategy that you followed for revision? Because obviously you cannot revise everything, but anything that you did in particular.
I had a notepad. So the very specific rules, maybe idioms, I would write them down. So
Okay.
even if you don't revise them, I think just the writing down bit physically really helps with your memory. I revised them on the end on the day of my exam, and no, nothing special really. I would just look at the questions, look at all possible answers to them, and if some topics are weak, for example, tenses, I forgot a few rules like past perfect, future perfect. So then I would look at the video again on GMAT Quiz and go through
So
the
you would
concept booster
basically go to
again.
your platform and then do the relevant
I
modules
had
from
a
your course.
I was scared a bit that I would forget the things that I had studied earlier. but going through the concept boosters again really helped.
Okay. So it gave you a refresher in terms of like what was
Yes,
actually.
yes, yes.
So last 10 days or more about mocks, revision of few areas which you started feeling uncomfortable with as you were doing those mocks. You realized them and then you take them up, and you saw significant improvement in every single mock. And like
Yes,
after you took those basically.
yes, yes.
Good, good. And what about the day of the test? Like, what? How was your day like on that particular day?
So I had booked a 3 p.m. slot, which is pretty good. I mean, if you, but I still woke up around, I don't know, 8 9 a.m. Um,
Okay,
so I know people, like to chill on the day of the exam, but I mean, no, that's not what I have been doing at least for the past few years. And because we are used to studying till the last moment, so that's what I did here as well. Not study, but I just, just going through my notes again, reading up online, stuff like that. Then I had a light lunch, drove down to the center, and arrived early as you should, because I was also worried about the COVID situation, because like I live in Pune and that's a hotspot, whatever. But the center was great. I mean, I was the only GMAT applicant there. I mean,
okay. You had the
there were a
entire
few.
center to yourself.
Yeah, after a few, like 10 15 minutes, I had the entire room to myself. So that helped, I guess. The actual test taking experience, I thought that I had given 5 6 official mocks, so I would be prepared, but the actual experience is still different. Like, it's always different. Like, a few questions that I actually encountered were super tough. Like, in quant, like for example, I mean, I'm sure those were experimental questions because you also have them, so I wasn't too worried about them. I think that's very important. So while I was giving the test, I did not let any question bring me down. So if it was really tough, I just attempted whatever I could. I even skipped one quant question. Like, I could not figure it out. I did not waste any time. Skipped that and went
You
ahead.
guessed it
So
basically.
I think, yeah, the going through every question with a fresh perspective helps.
And you had a Quant 51 man. Like, in any way, take anything
And
to get
the
to that score.
funny thing is, I never scored a 51 in my mocks.
Okay.
So that was the first time.
But you're getting consistently 50 basically, right?
Yeah,
So that
50
was
is.
good.
Yeah.
So just to give anyone else who doesn't understand the difference between 50 and 51, just give some context. Uh, a 51 is achieved with a max of about one or two mistakes in the entire test, and then these mistakes should not be happening in the first two quarters for sure. 50 can be achieved with two mistakes, three mistakes, four, five, or six. So there are degrees of 50. Let me put it that way. But there is
Yeah,
no
the
degree
curve
of
is
51.
very harsh.
Curve is very harsh, and partially because of Indians and
Indians.
Chinese food cooking come in the test, so it has become a lot more difficult nowadays. So I'm sure Ritwik did not end up getting a 51 in any of the mocks, but he knew that he was headed in the right direction, and he kept his calm. He made sure that even if he's seeing a new question, he did not get anxious. He just believed in his own capabilities and took it lightly. Just made sure that he's giving his best to that particular question, and he was still able to get that perfect score. And just to tell you, like 1 point in quant is equal to 10 points in overall performance. So that is one thing which is very very critical. With the same verbal score, he might have landed up at a 750 or a 740 as well if he got a quant 50. But yeah, so definitely that's a big thing. But did you feel nervous about verbal as well, or like how was that verbal experience?
So, funny thing is, I actually felt that I bombed my quant. I felt that I had,
Okay.
like, yeah, I felt it was really bad. So then I felt ki, okay, I can't go any further low. So verbal, I felt went really good. I felt like all of them were easy questions, but surprisingly, my verbal score was lower than usual, and quant was 51. But
Yeah,
even
you
in
can
verbal,
get.
I feel I saw some completely new constructions in parallelism that I had not seen before.
Yes, slightly. I am also hearing that GMAT is, yeah. There's few changes which are happening, but we need to get more data points to actually understand
Yeah.
whether those changes are like just experimental in nature or they're
Mhm.
actually happening. But I've also heard, like today, I was speaking to one student who said that he had about 15 or 16 sentence correction questions, and when I looked at his ESR, I could for sure say that 12 of them were scored. But earlier in GMAT, they used to give like equal weightage to SCCR and RC. So for this guy, out of 30 scored questions, 12 were scored from SC itself. But otherwise, it was supposed to be 10, 10, 10 each on each area. So again, those things are also happening, but we have to still get more data points to actually come to a conclusion. GMAT doesn't reveal that anymore. So, but yeah, like good to know that you kept your calm even after like you felt that you bombed Quant. You actually did bomb it, but in a different way. Good, good. So how was the timing? Like, did you follow any strategy for timing, like pacing your test? Like, did you have some markers or
Right. So,
like?
like I said, I used to keep a mental clock in my mind. So the way I kept track was I would see what is the average time I have remaining for the next questions. So that's what I would always want to keep it below 2 minutes. So for quant, it isn't that easy. I think it's 31 questions in 62 minutes. So that's exactly 2 minutes, right? And so I would basically look after every sixth question to keep a track. Key. Okay, 25% of my test is complete, 50% is completed. So that's what I did for quant, and similarly for verbal. So I felt that quant actually took up more time than verbal. Verbal would finish early. Quant took more time, but
So you
same
had
strategy in verbal as well.
equally dividing the time across the quarters. Like you were
Yeah,
equally.
yes. I did not. I mean, I tried to get every question right, so I did not give extra attention to my first questions or anything.
Okay. Good. So let's take up a few questions. Again, this is a question from Neha. So she says, any tips for integrated reasoning? She's preparing for the EA and struggling with IR. So I never asked you
Indeed,
what was the score in IR that you got.
seven, I think, 6 or 7. Even I don't remember. I,
Yeah,
I think it was
not
six,
not
six. Yeah.
six. Okay. Okay. So any tips
So
for IR that you got?
for IR is pretty straightforward. I mean, it's a combination of both quant and verbal. For quant, it is more stats heavy. So again, it helped because I had done a lot of statistics while work, maybe at my internships or while studying. So if you have a fair idea of how a graph is, what it means, what a point represents, what the scale represent, it helps. Nothing much to be done there. But the slightly trickier questions are the ones that involve either logic, in which who should sit where, stuff like that, because you have so many options, and the CR questions, which are disguised as IR. They're pretty much same as CR only, because instead of the usual CR question in which you have a passage and 5 options, you have maybe 5 into 2 matrix.
Okay.
So, but
And you're
nothing
preparing well.
different. I mean, if you're preparing well for your content verbal, IR should be the same, is what I feel.
So like, how much effort did you put in for IR?
No extra effort because I was scoring sevens and eights in my mocks, so I did not give any extra attention to that.
And when you said statistics, I'm pretty sure that you did not mean heavy statistics like standard deviation or let's
No,
say
no, no.
correlation
It's
or regression, like basic
no, no,
understanding
no.
of
When I say
linear.
statistics, I mean looking at the graph. So,
Looking at the
like a
graph.
pictorial representation of the statistics. The max thing they ask is averages and percentages. Like, yeah, that's what I said. Percentages are your biggest enemy if you are struggling with IR.
So basically, word problems is what you need to ace if you are actually wanting to do well on IR, because you need to
Yeah,
understand the concept of percentages and averages, right?
yeah, because you need to translate them, add them up, then to take the percent again. So you should also be familiar with the calculator tool.
And any suggestions on the whiteboard? What is better, online or offline? I guess you took the online GMAT, right? So
Yes,
you took the test at
offline.
the GMAT, sorry,
Yeah,
offline GMAT.
no, so that's the entire debate, right? So I was thinking of getting the GMAT since a long time. Actually, ended up delaying because I had read enough on reviews online, speaking bad about the online GMAT, so I did not even consider it. I just knew that there are so many things that can go wrong. Like like today, my internet connection went off. That could just happen at any moment, and the proctor could consider it as cheating. So I did not even consider taking the online GMAT.
I was actually speaking to one student today. Again, I'm talking about a lot of incidences from today because those are fresh in my mind as we speak. And this student told me that his online GMAT was cancelled thrice because of technical issues, not just at his end, at the other end as well. So, again, if you have a very good internet connection, if you are very sure about it, that it works always, you have a backup or something. And one more thing you have to take into account when you're taking the online GMAT is that you don't mouth words a lot, because if you mouth words a lot, then the
Exactly,
proctor might
exactly.
actually stop you.
Hmm. You mouth your words or do this or do this or with the pen. There's just so many things. You just need to sit there like a zombie. and I know I couldn't do that.
Yeah, the advantage is also like you take it from the comfort of your home.
If you're
So I
home,
feel that unless you have a limitation of, let's say, you can't go out because of COVID and there are lockdown in your zone, then probably test center also makes a lot of sense. I know there's a different territory that you're going to, like it's not your known territory, but I guess you get used to it if you're prepared. So better
one
not to
small thing
take
is I
any
also
risk.
practiced with a mask to my last two mocks,
Okay, by
just in
specifically for
case.
that test center, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So how was that experience like working with the mask?
Not bad really. I mean, I did not wear the heavy N95. I mean, I'm not suggesting you do that. Everyone, please take yeah, takes care. But I wear a cotton mask because it was slightly easier to breathe.
So, any last tips, like let's say anything, any other tips that you want to give students that we did not ask for, I did not ask for?
I'll say that GMAT is a very learnable test. I mean, you can really I mean, if you put in the efforts, you should see the results. If you're not seeing the results, then there's something wrong, maybe in your prep, or maybe something else you should explore. Something is not working right. And if you focus on your weak aspects, I mean, rather than just blindly doing what you're good at, you should focus on your weak aspects. That's what I'll say.
Okay, good. So what you're saying is that if you're not getting to your score, there's obviously some big reason why you're not getting it right. It's not just
And so it's better to explore that first and do the correct thing as soon as you can.
very valid point. Very valid point. A lot of people take a lot of time to just realize this. They feel that okay, there's nothing wrong with me. It's just about the luck or that day that was not going right, and they kind of redo the same thing again. And what you're saying is that understand whether you're actually doing it right or not. Make sure that you have the root cause analysis done, and then work on those root
Work
causes
on that.
consistently. And what about your plans to get into B school? Like that's one question that I have from KJ. And anyone else has any questions, please feel free to ask. Like we can have Ritwik for 5 more minutes, I guess. Less. Like
Sure thing. Yeah, I'm available. So,
so if you have any other questions, ask it. But Ritwik, yeah, like this is too easy.
no plans. I mean, like I said, I've just graduated, so I have at least like 3, 4, 5 years down the line for me to start thinking. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, start applying to business schools in after like say 3, 4 years.
Okay.
Not in India, of course, because I would apply right away if I had to do an Indian MBA. That makes more sense.
So you had already thought about this that you want to do an foreign MBA.
Yeah,
That's why you
so
chose
that was
GMAT.
always the plan. Right from my first year, I knew ki, I have to do this. I also considered some deferred applications, but ended up not applying and thought I'd rather put in my efforts into actually, doing the GMAT solid.
Okay. Okay. So any reason why you did not look at the deferred admissions?
Yeah, so those are like super elite programs that take in me that are already very tougher to get into the usual program, and being from India, it just doesn't put you in give you good odds. And I wasn't so sure. I mean, of my profile as well. So I thought, no loss. I mean, I might apply in the conventional way later. I mean, if I was in some other countries, I mean, I would definitely apply.
Again losing we lost you a little bit, but I got the sense that it was more about like the programs being very difficult to get in, and you thought that you have a better shot after having your GMAT score, and the um,
I mean, I didn't.
competition is
So I did not have my GMAT yet. Didn't want to rush it as well.
one step at a time. Nice. Angel has a question. What was your GMAT with score prediction? In fact, Angel, I was actually thinking about putting that in the slide. I did not end up doing it, but I can probably show that to you right away. Like, what was the prediction by the GMAT Viz platform? Uh, I guess it should be visible now on your screen, guys. So what we were
Um,
predicting was somewhere between 710 to 750. We want to show 750, but we generally give a range just to be safe. And basically, uh, Ritwik ended up achieving the higher end of both. So we were not predicting a 51. We generally do not do that because 51 is a very difficult thing. It depends a lot on the day of the test how you're performing as well. But we were predicting a 50 to a max and a 41 to a max. So yeah, Ritwik ended up achieving very close to that. So
So my projected GMAT score was actually, it was usually between 740 and 760. But towards the end of my prep, when it started going down. So that also bugged me a little bit.
Yeah, it could have been affected majorly, I think, by your performance in the mocks, I guess,
Mocks,
because some of
mocks,
your
yeah,
mocks
yeah,
are not
yeah.
that well that you did. So probably because of that it happened. And Abhi Ali, I'm gonna get this mic changed for sure. Don't worry about that. Not gonna happen in the next session. But yeah, I'm sorry about this mic. There's some technical fault with this one. Ravi has one question. Ravi says, which part was better to give first quant or verbal? Which basically, did you try doing verbal and quant, like switching the order between the two? And which one
I think that's a
was the best
very
for you?
subjective thing. You have to figure out what works best for you. When it came to the mocks, I always did quant first, so that's what I did in the actual test as well. You have to figure whatever works best for you.
I'm a big advocate of starting with verbal first, by the way. So I agree with the Ritwik's point that it actually depends on what works best for you. So take up different marks and apply both things and see which one works better for you. So it's always better to actually see what works best for you rather than just randomly doing one thing or the other. But the thought process here is that if you're someone who works better when you actually start with a stronger area, you feel more motivated if you do well on the test, like in the beginning, and that keeps you going on the weak area. That makes sense to start. Then makes sense to start with your strong area. But I generally advocate starting with your weak area because if you are able to utilize your focus on the weak area first, that's a better thing to do. So I would recommend doing both and looking at what works best for you. As Ritwik said, it's subjective. So please see which one works better for you. Uh, KJ has another interesting question. His final question. He says, "How do you compare yourself before and after GMAT in terms of thought process, structured or vague?" Like,
That's a very good question because it does. Because now, when I'm looking at sentences on social media or listening to my friends, I'm like, mentally, I think that is the wrong modifier. You're modifying the wrong entity. That makes a difference. 100%.
good, yeah, good, yeah. I have seen that change in myself. Not just for the written things, even assumptions. There are like when even
You
when you're
can't.
having, you start thinking about what kind of assumptions people are making when they are giving an argument. So yeah, that happens, and I think that's a good thing also. Like it makes you think in a very
Yeah,
organized fashion, right?
definitely.
Might be annoying to the other person. I'm not sure how they perceive it, but I think it's good. Angel has a question. Did he solely depend on GMAT with course material or did he use any other resources? So I guess Angel answered this question. He used GMAT with primarily along with the official guide questions. So he used
So
official
one
guide and the
thing,
official guide
yeah,
verbal.
verbal review. One thing I forgot to mention, I also did Manhattan Advanced Quant at the end.
Okay,
At the end, so that was just to that's when I was trying to push to 50 to 51.
okay, good, good, good. So these are the four things that he used: official guide,
Yeah,
verbal review, GMAT with course, and the Manhattan advanced guide. That book basically. Okay. Do you go for the right answer always, or basically do more intelligent guesses? So I think Ravi, what Ritwik did was more of the right answers. Like some intelligent guesses obviously were taken, but they were like it's very few. As he said that he focused on getting each question correct. That was his most important focus. And I guess this is something you cannot do on the day of the test directly. This is something which you have to put into practice every single day when you're solving questions. And if you do that right, that automatically happens on the day of the test as well. Good guys. So this is great to have you here today, Ritwik, and I'm sure that all of us got to learn a lot. 760 is a great score in the first attempt. I did not get it. I feel jealous. I only got to a 740. Not a score to really boast about, but I'm sure that 760 gives you a lot of relief. And all the best from my side for the next free run, like home run that you're gonna have for the next attempt. And let's see if you can take it up to that 770, 780, and have a better chance at maybe receiving a scholarship 3, 4 years down the line. So all
Thanks,
the best
Piyush.
from my side, and thank you so much for taking our time today and helping all of us here to discuss
Thanks for
this.
having me. Thanks.
And in case any one of you wants to talk to me to get any help on your GMAT preparation, you can actually use this link over here. I'm just showing this link. This is the link to schedule a call directly with me. So in case anyone wants to connect with me, know more about GMAT quiz, anything, you can connect here or you can just go to gmatquiz.com.
I personally exploited that link a lot. Like I talked to you at least 3 times before giving the test.
Definitely, it was really nice interacting with you every single time, and we had really good things to talk about. And I still remember when you came to me and said, "Okay, when should I take the test? Like, should I take it? Like, my job is starting." And we had, I guess, a couple of discussions around that as well, like fixing the final date and all. And then we had discussions beforehand as well. And I'm so glad that the discussion helped, and we are here today. And I'm sure that we can also help other people. So in case you guys are interested, please reach out to us. We'll be more than happy and glad to help you as well. Okay. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Ritwik, and bye bye, everyone.
Bye.